before I go into this content, remember we're talking about personal injury tales, so let me just kind of set the stage here of what's going on and really where we're at. Remember, personal injury attorney sales is very lucrative because there's a huge potential market. Remember, only 25% of personal injury attorneys actually proactively manage their case and refer cases out, and only 32% of personal injury patients see chiropractors or CAM providers. Not even that number is not even chiropractors. That's CAM providers, of which chiropractic is the largest percentage. So 68% of personal injury patients do not get chiropractic care, and a large percentage of the personal injury attorneys do not deal with chiropractors. So that's the good and bad news. So there's a huge potential market, but that's why we need to do sales and not advertising. But just be aware that when we go through personal injury attorney sales, that remember that we want to set the stage depending on, in other words, you would not want to do this presentation in a cold call. You would want, because remember, we're trying to affect 4 factors: trust, defenses, resistance, and confidence. Well, if I've already done some things to affect trust and decrease their defenses, they're going to be much more receptive to this presentation. If you have a cold call or a lead and you didn't do any homework up front, in other words, there was no contacts, there was no visualization, there was no interest in being stirred, there was no authority being stirred, there was no personal story. In other words, there were no emotional triggers to affect the attorney's defenses or resistance. You're going to have a much more difficult time of this presentation working. So this is why we want to do several things prior to this presentation, things meaning triggers. We want to pull some emotional triggers prior to this presentation, and that's why we do the publicity, that's why we do the advertising videos to gain their attention, that's why we do multiple contacts. That's what all that is about, is to position, and hopefully we started with an introduction active-passive referral category in your list to begin with. So let me just set the stage and just be highly aware when you do a sales presentation, it doesn't matter what sales presentation it is, when you do an educational sales training, and that's probably the words I would use. I wouldn't use sales with attorney. I'd probably call it educational training. Sales just is a negative word to a lot of people. Educational training is probably the words that I'd use. So when you do your educational training, just be aware that you have to have some leadway in to increase its effectiveness, and you'll see.